This is not Mrs. Puff. You may think she's just SpongeBob's
Wait,
voting
what?
teacher, but you'd be very, very wrong. For years, she's been running from her dark and mysterious past, but it's finally caught up to her. And behind it all is a mastermind who's been secretly controlling her life and psychologically torturing her.
What?
If you guys thought my last two theories were mind-blowing,
Fuck? Wait. That was a loaded, like, front line right there. All right. Let me just process all this. Let me just take it in. Okay. I'm with you. 25 seconds in. Jesus Christ.
For my biggest conspiracy yet. This is the Mrs. Puff theory. I gotta start off by saying, wow, the reaction to my last two SpongeBob theories has been insane.
How does she know? How does she know?
Squilliam, you lying, deceiving,
Sifa bastard!
handsome young devil!
I'm glad you guys are enjoying my
Saw
ridiculously deep
himself.
dives into this show. I mean, I have to watch so much SpongeBob and read so much of the Wikipedia to put these theories together, but it's worth it because the writers actually take the time to set these things up. Now, a lot of
So
people
they
have been
did do it
asking,
on purpose.
Alex, how do you come up with these crazy conspiracy theories? Well, I always start these theories by looking for the moments in the show that seem to be implying more than they're letting on. Like I've said before, SpongeBob is a weird show with lots of abstract humor, but I can usually understand the intent the writers had behind a weird joke. But then there's stuff like this.
I hope I still remember how to do this.
Doesn't she just, like, do a balloon and then
Yeah.
throw
it's
it away?
so confusing and weird that it feels like the writers are trying to imply something beyond just weirdness for the sake of comedy. And
Was she
nowhere
like a
in the
clown?
show is there more of these moments than with Mrs. Puff. And once I started looking into it, it led me down the deepest rabbit hole I've ever seen from this show. So,
The ugly-
let's begin. Uh-oh.
The school
Looks
one?
like
The
I'm
school
getting
puff?
hacked by a hacker. I knew this would happen if I got too close to the truth. Well, it's a good thing this video is sponsored by NordVPN.
Yes. Dark past.
Mrs. Puff is a boarding school teacher in Bikini Bottom. She's passed all of her students except for one, SpongeBob
Hold on, I'm gonna close the door so it's not too loud. Okay, we're back.
SquarePants. He's taken her driver's test hundreds of all of her students.
What?
Mrs. Puff is a boarding school teacher in Bikini Bottom. She's
True.
passed all of her students except for one,
True.
SpongeBob SquarePants. He's taken her driver's test hundreds of times.
True.
And he always ends up failing it and causing destruction and chaos.
He's
that
horrible.
Usually ends up with Mrs. Puff going to jail, despite it not really
Oh,
being her
actually
fault.
true.
We also know that she was once married, but her husband was killed by fishermen.
That's my driving teacher,
right.
Mrs. Puff.
Mrs. Puff? Oh,
Aw.
she's married.
Oh no, Mr. Krabs, she's single.
Then what happened to Mr. Puff?
She doesn't like to talk about it.
She doesn't like to talk about it.
Throughout the show, there are moments like this that seem to be hinting at her having a dark, mysterious past. And in Season 2, Episode 10,
I forgot that
No
even
Free
existed.
Ride, we get the biggest clue about who Mrs. Puff really is. After SpongeBob fails the driving test yet again, Mrs. Puff has just had it with him and ends up just giving up and giving him his license, even though he never really passed.
Then she, like,
quickly
gets
realizes that this
traumatized.
is a
She's like,
horrible
he's
idea
gonna
and he'll
blow up the
probably end up
town.
destroying the entire town.
La 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 la. He's just killing people.
So much destruction. This reporter asks,
Why?
Local consensus places the blame on this negligent, selfish
Why,
driving
Mrs.
instructor
Puff?
Remember this clip, because it's going to be very important later on. And then she says this insanely revealing line.
What have I done? Everyone will know that I let him slide through school. I'll have to move to a new city.
Change
and
my
start
name.
A new boarding school with a new name.
No, not again.
No, not again. Come on, it's like they're just begging someone to make a theory.
I remember
about this.
that.
So we now know Mrs. Puff
I just
was
never
originally
cared
from a different
to, like,
town.
I don't know.
She used to own a different boarding school, and
Facts.
Mrs. Puff isn't even her real name. There's something in her past that she ran away from. Now,
Oh,
there's
true,
been some
'cause she
debate
changed her
over
name.
whether she's
You're right.
actually referring to a new name for herself or for her boarding school, but I do think she's talking about her own name, because if she's trying to run away
was
from
this
something in
great
her past,
episode.
she wouldn't start a new boarding school with her real name in the title. Now, when she says again, I don't think she's just referring to starting a new life.
Everyone will know that I let him slide through school. Not again.
I think at her previous boarding school, she had a terrible student just like SpongeBob who she prematurely gave a license to, and it led to something so terrible happening that she had to run away and start a whole new life. In Season 3, Episode 5, Doing Time, we get a flashback to when she first opened up the school.
Where did I go wrong?
Oh, she's like, with the opening of my new vote.
That as long as a student is willing to learn,
And then SpongeBob walks up.
never give up.
Hi, I'm SpongeBob SquarePants.
with the opening of this new boating school. Let's keep in mind that this is not her first boating school. Maybe the whole reason she's making this pledge now at her second school is because she gave up on a student at her previous school, and that led to her having to run away and start a new life.
Sure.
She's pledging to never make the same mistake again. Now let's skip ahead to one of the newer episodes. Season 12, episode 21, Lighthouse Loop.
Okay, so far, I'm on board. We're good. 5 minutes, 6 minutes in, I'm on board.
Where Mrs. Puff has SpongeBob organize all the stuff she keeps in the school's lighthouse.
We should change.
There's lots of interesting things hidden in the background, but the first thing that caught my eye was this file labeled Mrs. Puff. It makes sense for a teacher to have files on all their students, but why would she have a file about herself? But let's remember, she's not Mrs. Puff. That's a fake identity she created, and I'm willing to bet all of her fake identification documents are in this file. Back in No Free Rides, she just gives SpongeBob a license that she already had for him. So she clearly makes these licenses and would probably know how to make fake identifications. But that's not the only hint about Mrs. Puff's past in this lighthouse. There is something in here that directly confirms all of this. As SpongeBob swallows all of Mrs. Puff's junk, we see something very interesting for only a few frames.
Do we?
A
Where?
deranged boat teacher makes getaway. 10 seasons later, and
Wait,
the creators
is that
are still
real?
hiding stuff
Wait,
about Mrs.
what?
Puff.
Distracts authorities with balloon animals? Shut up. Shut the front door. Look at his fucking face. Jesus Christ. Shut up. This is real? Big fat meanie. I remember that picture. With balloon animals? Oh my god, dude. There's no fuck. That's why she did the balloon animals when she jumped in the car. That's why there's actual proof. Okay. All right. Okay. All right.
Teacher makes getaway. 10 seasons later, and the creators are still hiding stuff about Mrs. Puff fleeing her old life. It might not look like it at first, but we actually get a ton of new information from this newspaper. This is from the New Kelp Post, which tells us Mrs. Puff originally lived in New Kelp City. Then there's a caption that reads, "Distracts authorities with balloon animals." And do you remember that clip from the beginning?
I hope I still remember how to do this.
She makes a balloon animal. She distracted them with balloon animals.
So whenever Mrs. Puff makes a getaway or commits a crime, she leaves behind a balloon animal to distract the police.
That's
I'm
so
telling you guys, these
stupid.
writers don't just do stuff randomly. They have reasons for everything. And the most damning piece of evidence from this newspaper is actually the picture of Mrs. Puff. Kind of a strange photo, right? We have seen this exact same photo of her before. In the episode No Free Rides, when she imagines what would happen if SpongeBob got his license.
Local consensus places
Where?
the blame on this negligent,
Oh!
selfish driving instructor.
This means that this isn't just her imagination of what might happen. This is also her remembering
It's a
what happened
memory.
when she lived in New Kelp City and prematurely gave one of her students a license. And I'm willing to bet that the fish reporting the news is the exact same one who reported about her in New Kelp City. Let me explain. We know from the episode Whatever Happened to SpongeBob that reporters from the Bikini Bottom News can also work for the New Kelp City News. But the real reason I think this is because of his hair. In the entire show, we have never seen this fish reporter with hair before. Why would the creators go out of their way to add that detail? Because Mrs. Puff isn't imagining him as he looks now. She's remembering him from years ago when he used to have hair, when he reported about her in New Kelp City. Mrs. Puff had been running from her past.
All right. Okay. That's a lot to process.
Ever since, and is now forced to relive her experience with an unteachable student through SpongeBob. But reliving this trauma has pushed her to the point of complete insanity. And trust me when I say that you have no idea how delusional she actually is.
The insanity of Mrs. Puff.
Another running gag throughout the series is Mrs. Puff's occasional nervous breakdowns or moments of insanity because of SpongeBob, and they get more severe as the show continues. At first, she did care for SpongeBob, but in the newer episodes, she literally tries to kill SpongeBob just to get him out of her life. Even SpongeBob just walking up to her gives her severe PTSD.
Hi, Mrs. Puff.
Hit the brakes!
Hit the brakes, SpongeBob!
The tree!
Wait, Mrs. Puff. We're not driving.
But these mostly seem like just one-off moments, and for the most part, Mrs. Puff is still a functioning member of society, right? I'm going to show you that she's actually much, much more insane and delusional than you may think. And some of the episodes she's in take place entirely in her own head. If we're talking about how insane Mrs. Puff is, there is no better place to start than the episode Doing Time. Once again, SpongeBob fails the voting test and causes destruction and chaos, which leads to Mrs. Puff going to jail. SpongeBob keeps breaking into jail to try and bust her out.
Yes.
But Mrs. Puff
And she's like,
actually
"No.
prefers being in jail
I'm
over
free.
teaching him."
I'm
We actually
no
get another
longer
interesting
near
line about
you.
Mrs. Puff's past in this episode.
I remember that.
Okay, you can do
She
this,
said that.
Puff. You can
Something
get
like
through
that.
this without losing your sanity. Oh, that's a road we don't want to go down again.
So we know that Mrs. Puff has lost her sanity in the past, probably from her previous terrible student. But it seems like she's recovered since then, except in this episode she has a complete mental breakdown. SpongeBob
and then she
keeps
sees-
appearing in impossible places until she gets thrown into solitary confinement.
And then
where
he
each
is
wall of the room transforms into a giant SpongeBob face. And then the episode ends in a way that's so weird and confusing that it rivals the infamous gorilla episode ending. As Mrs. Puff
How did
freaks
this-
out, she's suddenly transported back into the beginning
Oh,
of the
that's
episode
right.
when SpongeBob was taking the test. Except
then
this
it's like-
time, SpongeBob gets arrested instead of her.
Help! Help! No! This is not a good time! No!
I can't believe it. It was all a dream.
But that was a dream, wasn't it?
Jail.
Why would
She's-
you go to jail?
You already?
did your time.
Yeah, you already did your time. And then she's back in the, yeah. Wait, how did this episode end?
Get it.
So what's really going on in this episode? Was the ending all in her head?
That's how it ended,
Is Mrs.
right?
Puff just caught in an endless loop? I think this entire episode is inside of Mrs. Puff's head, and she's actually on the outside the whole time, but she's been imagining herself inside of prison. I can explain. Listen closely to what
I can explain.
the police officer tells Mrs. Puff.
I'm not going to jail.
Why would you go to jail?
You already did your
You
time.
already did your time.
Why would you go to jail? You already did your time. And then
Yes.
revealing she's still in a prison uniform despite being on the outside. So this scene is obviously inside of her head, which means everything we see is symbolic. And if we can understand the symbolism of it, we can understand what's really going on with Mrs. Puff. Notice how she's suddenly wearing a black and white striped prison uniform, even though the entire episode she's been wearing this orange jumpsuit.
True.
Why would the creators go to the extra effort to draw a whole new prison uniform for her? Well, we've seen her wear this black and white prison uniform before. The very
Have we?
first time she went to prison back in season 1, episode 7, Hall Monitor. So when the police officer says, "You've already done your time," he's referring to the first time she went to jail. But why is she still wearing that uniform outside of prison? Well, she may have gotten out of jail, but she was by no means free. Having to teach SpongeBob is a prison in itself, and she manifests that by believing she's in jail and wearing a prison uniform despite being on the outside. This entire episode, every time SpongeBob magically appears, is all inside of her head. She is completely delusional, and hints that she's experiencing these hallucinations don't stop there. Just 6 episodes later, she goes to a house party SpongeBob throws, and while everyone is talking and having a good time, in the background we see she's literally sitting by herself talking to an ice sculpture of SpongeBob. You can't tell me this isn't intentional. I mean, look at this. Now, back in the episode No Free Rides, there is a very strange picture inside of Mrs. Puff's home. It's a picture of Mrs. Puff inside of a picture of Mrs. Puff inside of a picture of Mrs. Puff, creating an
Oh,
infinite loop.
shit.
This is something that has confused SpongeBob fans for years. But like everything in the show, there is a reason for
This
it
is-
being.
whoa.
One of the SpongeBob storyboard
Why are these so, why did the writers go to such lengths to put in such complicated things?
artists actually called it the biggest mystery.
What if
in
no
the
one ever found
entire
these?
show. If you think about it, this is just like the end of Doing Time, where she's stuck in an infinite loop of SpongeBob failing the driving test. Because it's
Okay.
all symbolic of what her life is, just an endless cycle of SpongeBob taking the test and failing, and no matter what she does to try and escape, she always ends up back in the same place at the end of the episode. So this picture is another symbolic manifestation of what she's feeling. We even see another one of these pictures all the way in season 9, episode 5, Bumper to Bumper. This is something that the show is consistently alluding to. Mrs. Puff is an unreliable narrator, and anything we see with her could potentially all be inside of her own head.
Oh my
In fact,
God.
I believe I found
She
another
looks so
episode that
crazy.
takes place inside of her head. In season 9, episode 17, SpongeBob Long Pants, SpongeBob goes to a different boating instructor and actually gets his license.
I don't
But
remember
as soon
this
as
one.
He does, we briefly cut to Mrs. Puff waking up.
You pass.
I finally got my driver's license!
Lock your doors, bar your windows, it's the end of the world!
Now, this seems like it's probably just a throwaway gag where Mrs. Puff somehow senses that SpongeBob got his license, and it
Yes.
causes her to wake up and freak
Yes.
out. You know, it's a good bit, it's funny, but I have a question. If the joke is that she's supposed
Garlic
to be
bread,
waking up
grilled
at
cheese?
the exact time SpongeBob gets his license,
Yes.
license, how come she wakes up at night when SpongeBob clearly gets his license during the day? Because this entire episode
Maybe he's on the
actually
different
takes place
part of the
inside of Mrs.
planet. What
Puff's
about that?
head. And this is the only part of the episode in the real world.
Oh my god.
I don't know what that was all about. I'm glad it's over.
But let me pause for a second. I'm sure some of you are already wondering if this contradicts my previous SpongeBob video, The Television Theory. If you haven't watched that one,
Oh,
the gist
that
of
was
it
a
is
whole
that
different-
the entire show is
oh.
a documentary television
Yes.
show, and everything we see is actually being secretly filmed by scuba
Yes.
divers. And there's a ton of evidence to support it. I'm very proud of that video. You should definitely check
Good
it out.
video.
But if everything's supposed to be from a camera, then how are we seeing things from inside Mrs. Puff's head? In fact, how do we see dreams and flashbacks and
Oh, is he gonna explain
well, I think the
this?
simple answer is that even though we view the show through an objective camera lens, the world itself still follows the rules of a cartoon.
You can
Okay.
never tell another living soul. Wait, hold on! What's that? My pen is out of ink. Plankton! You'll never get me formula, not even in a flashback.
In the world of SpongeBob, you can imagine something, and other people can still see, record, or interact with it.
Imagination.
That's just how cartoons work. Back to the theory. We know
Okay,
that her insanity
alright,
is
yeah,
causing
alright,
to live a
this
life
is a
of
cartoon,
delusion.
guys.
But if you remember back to the Lighthouse episode, she's also become an extreme hoarder. And looking at her collection
Yes.
of junk is like a look directly into her mind. So there's gotta be something we can learn about her from it. There's a picture of her boyfriend, Mr. Krabs, the hall monitor belt
Aw.
she gives her students, the mean drawings her students make her, SpongeBob's diary, a boating
True.
safety helmet. Wait,
Wait, SpongeBob's diary.
Why does she have SpongeBob's diary? The last time we saw that, it was safely put away in SpongeBob's
Wait, why-
library.
wait, why
What's it
would
doing
that
in her
be-
lighthouse? And why does she have Squidward's painting? And a table from the Krusty Krab? And SpongeBob's bike? And Squidward's teddy bear? And the hair curlers Mr. Krabs
She's a
had?
kleptomaniac?
And that statue of Squidward? And that diamond ring? And that
Oh
crown?
my
And
God.
that bucket of radioactive
Yo,
waste?
stop,
And
stop,
that jellyfish
stop,
sign?
stop.
Oh my god. Mrs. Puff is a kleptomaniac. Mrs. Puff has been stealing from everyone in Bikini Bottom. I can even prove that her pet snail from season 3, episode 19 was stolen.
My snail is up a tree.
What?
I've had her since I was a little girl. No!
You've had that snail since you've been a little girl, huh? Then how come
I
that
must
is the
get closer to the
exact same
screen.
snail Squidward had 4 episodes ago in the Great
Oh,
Snail
I
Race?
remember this from the
wouldn't let
first
Nellie
episode.
here play with that mongrel mutt. She's a purebred. See, she even has her own papers.
He even has her paperwork. Mrs. Puff clearly stole the snail from Squidward. But why the hell would Mrs. Puff steal all this other junk? What possible use could she have for any of it? We could find the answer to that question by looking at this green hat and this purple jacket. These were gifts Mr. Krabs bought her
I remember
on her
that.
first date, but she ended up feeling uncomfortable receiving them and gave them back to him.
Uh-huh.
I'm afraid I just don't feel comfortable.
then she
accepting
stole
all
it?
these gifts.
Except apparently she's not too uncomfortable to steal them back afterwards. So clearly Mrs. Puff isn't stealing this stuff because she wants to use it. She just steals for the thrill of it. Maybe stealing things is her way of coping with the insanity of her everyday life. And remember, this isn't the first time she's gone insane.
You can get through
What the hell?
losing your sanity. Oh, that's a road we don't want to go down again.
In fact, I have reason to believe that she started stealing things way back whenever she first went insane.
I hope I still remember how to do this.
I don't think she's just talking about remembering how to make balloon animals. She's probably also referring to remembering how to steal a boat. And if that's not enough for you, in a SpongeBob comic book, she actually admits that she used to rob banks and she wears the exact same ski mask.
There's a SpongeBob comic book? Do I have to read the comic book lore now to understand the entire universe of SpongeBob? Like when you have to read the manga so you can like get that insight, you know?
Life, all because she has to teach SpongeBob how to drive. It's led her to steal from the people she cares about and completely disassociate from reality.
She's
But
crazy.
That begs a very important question. If SpongeBob is causing her life to be so miserable, then why does she even keep teaching him? After all the destruction and pain he's caused,
That's a good
she'd
question.
totally be justified to expel him. Right? I mean, she will literally try and kill him so she doesn't have to teach him, but for some reason she can't just expel him. It's almost like there's someone forcing her to teach SpongeBob.
Oh, right. From the beginning. The mastermind. Okay. So this is what's left.
Back to the episode No Free Rides. After
Well, hold on. We're in too deep. We are Lolo. Welcome on in. How you doing?
prematurely giving SpongeBob a license, she steals
I need to
his
get
boatmobile
closer.
so he can't hurt anyone. In the end, this causes her to get arrested and go to jail,
Yes.
but then SpongeBob tells her this.
And besides, the warden says she'll let you go early if you do her a favor.
The warden?
What's that?
Free driving lessons.
She'll get to leave prison early if she gives free driving lessons. That seems like an oddly specific requirement. And that's not the only time this gets mentioned
remember
either.
that.
In Season 9, Episode 5, Bumper to Bumper, we get this scene.
If only SpongeBob could pass his boating test, he'd be out of my life once and for all. Unfortunately, I keep getting reminded of the consequences if I get too angry with the little nuisance.
Consequences. Are you telling me that if she refuses to teach SpongeBob specifically, she'll be violating her parole and get sent back to jail? Why does the prison
You're new
even
here?
care Mrs.
Welcome
Puff
on
teaches
in.
SpongeBob? Is it just
SpongeBob.
summer job?
Hold on.
Once again, Mrs. Puff ends up in
How are you,
jail,
Danny?
but this time she's forced to go to a prison boating school.
Oh, wow! A driver's education class!
Good day, class.
I must be having a nightmare! What's he doing here?
Dear Mrs. Puff, I'm following in your footsteps and got a job as a driver's ed teacher for the summer.
Who in their right mind would hire SpongeBob to do this after he's literally destroyed the city countless times while driving? Is this
So
just
who's
another
the
one of Mrs. Puff's
mastermind?
delusions? Or is the prison intentionally forcing her to be around SpongeBob just to torture her? I mean, look at the way the guard forces her to sit there and listen to him.
Get me out of here!
And look at that evil smile he has as he watches her endure this torture. There is something very strange going on with this prison.
I mean, yeah.
Then, in Season 10, Episode 8, The Getaway, Mrs. Puff meets a criminal named Dorsal Dan and starts to get romantic feelings.
And I need to know who this mastermind is.
They both accidentally land in prison, and the warden puts him in solitary confinement.
Wait.
At the end of the episode, they both accidentally land in while she's still dating Mr. Krabs. Shame on you, Mrs. Puff. At the
Season
10, Episode 8, The Getaway, Mrs. Puff meets a criminal named Dorsal Dan and starts to get romantic feelings for him. This is also while she's still dating Mr. Krabs. Shame on you, Mrs. Puff. At the end of the episode, they both accidentally land in prison, and the warden puts him in solitary confinement.
Warden, I found this one pulling up outside the prison. Dorsal Dan, a notorious getaway driver. Toss him in the clink.
I'll wait for you, my little tender boy.
In or out of jail, this prison will stop at nothing to make sure she is alone and miserable. But why?
True.
Who's behind all of this? Why would anyone care this much about torturing Mrs. Puff? Who's the mastermind pulling the string?
Yes. Who?
Well, maybe it has something to do with her old life in New Kelp City.
Okay.
Maybe she crossed someone and they've been plotting their revenge ever since.
If it's gonna be some random
I've looked
person.
in every single frame of New Kelp City, and there is nothing connecting it back to the prison. I've looked literally everywhere, and there's not a single person from the city that has anything to do with Mrs. Puff.
Okay.
Well, I mean, maybe except for the literal warden of the prison she's being kept in. He may be hiding slightly off screen, but that is clearly the same warden of the Bikini Bottom prison.
Oh,
and this isn't
my
some random
God.
background character that the show reuses all the time. He is a very distinct character. You can call me out on the Squilliam video all you
Okay, someone called him out. Why does he act like characters looking alike makes them the same? Not only does the show use the same models all the time, but fish literally look alike, which sort of makes it add up. Come to think of it, Squidward and Squilliam literally have the same body. I kind of said something similar, but
you want, but not this time. But wait a second. If
Okay.
the warden was originally from New Kelp City, then he'd probably know about Mrs. Puff's dark past and her true identity. So why hasn't he exposed her? He's just kept quiet about the fact that one of his inmates is living a completely false identity. She'd probably even get more prison time when they find out who she really is, so why hasn't he said anything? This is where things get very interesting. So, we know Mrs. Puff prematurely gave a student at her original boating school a license, and that led to them causing chaos and destruction. Maybe this student accidentally did something terrible to the warden, and he's blamed Mrs. Puff ever since. Whatever happened was so terrible that it caused him to move to Bikini Bottom and get a job as the warden of the town's prison. And to his surprise, he finds out that one of his inmates is actually the person he blamed for that terrible thing happening. This works out perfectly for him. He can finally get his revenge on Mrs. Puff by making her life miserable. All he has to do is reveal her dark secret, and she'll be stuck in jail for much longer. Except for one small issue with his plan. Mrs. Puff actually likes being in prison.
One day down, 2,528 to go. Oh, that's just shy of 4 years without SpongeBob. I'm going to you
She does.
enjoy
She
this.
loves
So,
prison.
he comes up with a new plan. Keep Mrs. Puff secret and let her out of prison early, but only under the condition that she has to teach SpongeBob. He's
Stupid.
literally turning
Oh
her
my
normal
God.
life into a prison. And he makes sure going back to prison to avoid SpongeBob isn't even an option for her anymore, because he'll make sure that SpongeBob
What
is always
the
in there with her.
fuck?
And he's not gonna let her escape and
It's like a super elaborate way to punish someone. Okay, I'm on
start a
board.
new life
Sure.
like she did in New Kelp City. He makes sure to give her an ankle bracelet that doesn't let her leave Bikini Bottom.
I can't even leave town without violating my parole.
He is the mastermind who's been controlling everything this entire time. But guess what? His insidious plan doesn't even end there.
And man, this theory is deep. Jeez.
This is not the first time we've seen the Warden character. We first see him in Season 4,
Wait, really?
Episode 2, Crabs vs. Plankton. In this episode, Plankton slips on some water in the Krusty Krab and decides to sue Mr. Krabs
Oh,
for
right.
everything he owns.
But he wasn't
And
even
then
hurt.
guess who shows up out of nowhere and offers to be Mr. Krabs' lawyer?
The warden?
Is a good lawyer.
Whoa, did somebody say lawyer? Richard A. Bottomfeeder, attorney at law. I couldn't help but notice
Okay.
that despicable display.
Richard A. Bottomfeeder, the warden of the Bikini Bottom prison, is also apparently a lawyer? That's kind of strange. Those both sound like major careers. You usually wouldn't imagine someone being both. Then he says he'll be Mr. Krabs' lawyer completely free of charge.
So, how much is this gonna cost me?
Actually, I won't charge a dime unless we win.
Well, that's awfully generous of you, Richard. He seems very confident that he can win the case, but right before he goes to court, he slips on some water and says SpongeBob will have to be Mr. Krabs' lawyer now.
Oh, this is gonna be a slam dunk.
No! Mr. Krabs' lawyer, speak to me!
Wrapped with pain, can't move. Looks like you're gonna have to handle this one, son.
He tells SpongeBob that he has to represent Mr. Krabs, even though he himself called SpongeBob a liability.
Actually, SpongeBob, we won't be needing any testimony from you. Why, you'd be more of a liability than an asset.
But it's okay, because apparently all SpongeBob needs to win is inside of Richard's briefcase.
Everything you need to win is in this here case.
Really? Everything?
Except when SpongeBob gets to court, he realizes that Richard never gave him the combination to the case.
It's,
Oh,
here.
and he couldn't open it. That's right.
In here.
Is there a problem?
Your lawyer didn't give me the combination.
Either Richard A. Bottomfeeder is the worst lawyer in history, or this is all part of his elaborate plan to ruin Mrs. Puff's life. Here's what I think happened. First, he finds out that Mr. Krabs is being sued, and he wants to ensure that Mr. Krabs loses the case because he wants to destroy any chance Mrs. Puff has at finding love. So he pretends to be a lawyer, even offering his services for free, something Mr. Krabs can't resist. He makes Mr. Krabs feel confident that they're gonna win the case, and then at the last second, he pretends to get into an accident so he can't represent Mr. Krabs. Instead of finding a real lawyer to replace him, he tells the most incompetent person for the job, SpongeBob, that he has to be Mr. Krabs' lawyer. And he gives him a case that allegedly has all the answers in it without actually
But it's
giving
locked,
SpongeBob the
right.
combination,
So he set him up for
setting
failure.
him up for a total failure in court.
Yeah,
Richard
dude, I am with this person.
A. Bottomfeeder
I am with you, Alex. Dude, we're the same mind vibes, bro.
refuses to let anyone get close to Mrs. Puff. Not Dorsal Dan, and not Mr. Krabs. This guy has squilliam levels of hate for Mrs. Puff. But why? What exactly did her previous student do that warrants
If he can answer this.
this much torture? It can't be something as simple as him or his property getting damaged. It has to be something life-changing. Something like losing a loved one because of the student's reckless driving. And I think the show gives us one last hint about who this might have been. All the pictures in Mrs. Puff's house are very meaningful to her. She's got photos of Mr. Krabs, her pet snail, and of course those infinite photos that told us so much about her mental state. But there is one more photo in this house that might be the key to this entire conspiracy. In Season 12, Episode 14, Plankton's Old Chum, we see a photo of someone we've never seen before on Mrs. Puff's wall. There's some surprising similarities between this character and
the bow tie, I suppose. Oh, if he took off the hair? Wait.
Richard. The green color, the red bow tie, the overall fancy, serious appearance. It clearly isn't the same person, but maybe this is someone related to Richard. Like a father, a son, or a brother that Mrs. Puff's former student killed. And the reason
That's dark. Yo, that's really dark right there with that transition too.
she keeps a photo of him up is to have a permanent reminder to never make the same mistake of giving someone a license who doesn't deserve it.
Cause she
Mrs.
killed
Puff is a
someone
boarding school teacher who once made a terrible
indirectly
mistake that led to the loss of her business, identity, sanity, and any chance at finding happiness. I like to think that there used to be a time when she was happy, back when her husband was still alive. If only he was still around today, maybe she wouldn't have to face all of this on her own. Thank you for watching, everyone. I hope you enjoyed. Is what I would say if I was done, except her husband is still alive. Woo! Let's
Wait,
do
what?
this. In the SpongeBob movie, SpongeBob and Patrick travel to a gift shop named Shell City that's full of dead fish turned into knickknacks and ornaments.
And then they all came to
Except
life.
They end up setting off the smoke detector, which activates the sprinkler system and brings all the dead fish back to life, including a very familiar-looking pufferfish hanging from the ceiling.
That's
Mr.
not
Puff
how
is
they
alive.
never.
Well, wait a second. If he's alive and he escaped, then why hasn't he gone back to Mrs. Puff? Why is she still alone?
Yeah.
Because remember, she ran away from their home in New Kelp City and started a new identity. So sadly, Mr. Puff has no way of finding her. The tragedy of Mrs. Puff's story is that her happiness is just a city away, but she can never even leave town because that would violate her parole. Richard A. Bottomfeeder probably even knows her husband is alive and is making sure they're never reunited. As the name says, Richard really is
A bottom feeder? Ah!
This video
Ah!
took a ton of time and effort to do all the research for, so I really hope you guys enjoy. Thank you for watching, and thanks to NordVPN for sponsoring this theory. Go to nordvpn.com/AlexBale.
Ah! Is that it? Oh shit. Okay. Just grabbing some meat. Nothing out of the ordinary. I'm sure he's gonna just cook it up and oh, we're throwing it away. All right. Why are we throwing away meat? Or maybe he's just doing something else. This is like an extra step that I've never seen before when it comes to cooking. I'm sure he's gonna throw it in the oven or something. He's gonna bury it. He's gonna bury it underground. No? What are you doing? Well, don't do that. Oh shit. Are you gonna throw some food? Are you feeding something in the dark? Dude, that's... What the fuck? Oh my god, episode number 4. That is such a good segue. Or like, I should say like, hint towards it, right? Dude, that's cool. I got goosebumps, chat. I got goosebumps. Okay. Okay, I'm on board. I'm on board. Now there's even more lore added into the universe. Now there's a mastermind or something giving Alex the information. That's so cool. I love how he did that. Damn.